Cartoon Obsession. Hello everybody, my name is Nathan and I am the man with a cartoon obsession. I've been doing a lot of reviews lately. I'm not sure if you guys are sick of watching them, but I figured I would break the monotony of that by doing something completely different. Today I'm going to be looking at and ranking the 3 big cartoon channels: Disney Channel, Cartoon Network, and Nickelodeon. I have no idea if anybody has made a video like this before, and I've purposely avoided looking that up so I can give my own input without any influence from other people's opinions. Here's how I'll be basing the rankings. Number 1. The quality and treatment of the programming that the channel has put out. Number 2. The impact and legacy of the channel as a whole. And number 3, of course, there will be some personal bias here. After all, this is based on my opinion and my take on these channels. I will be presenting facts, sure, but you may rank the 3 channels differently than I would. Now that I'm through with my preamble, let's begin this ranking of the 3 big cartoon channels with the bottom of the proverbial totem pole.
On the Lord Hut, here a hut, Nick. On the Lord Hut, here a hut, Nick, Nick. On the Ricky Ticky Low, while living #1 Nickelodeon.
For the record, just because I'm ranking Nickelodeon the lowest doesn't mean I hate the channel. I like a lot of things about all of these channels, and I have a lot of criticisms about all of these channels. Nickelodeon certainly has a lot going for it. After all, they're responsible for arguably the most iconic cartoon of the 21st century and one of the most iconic of all time, that of course being SpongeBob SquarePants. They've also put out other popular long-running series such as Rugrats and The Fairly OddParents, and it looks like The Loud House is going to be their next cash cow. Well, that and Henry Danger, I guess, but I don't want to get into how happy I was when I heard that show was ending, and how angry I was when I heard it was getting another spin-off. Anyway, while they did put out great shows like that, they never knew when to quit. They've milked all of those cartoons I mentioned for all they were worth. Rugrats was on the air for 13 years, not counting the 3 movies and 2 spin-offs, as well as the reboot that's supposed to happen. Everything revolving around that show came in varying degrees and quality, from great to awful. The Fairly OddParents was the same way. That was on the air for 16 years, and while it never had any theatrical films or spin-offs, it was still milked completely dry. By the time they started introducing new characters, which I personally didn't mind for Rugrats by the way, it was clear that they were running out of ideas. I didn't mind Poof, but I couldn't stand Sparky or Chloe. And let's not forget how the show ended, but I'll talk about that a little later. As for SpongeBob SquarePants, despite the unfortunate passing of series creator Steven Hillenburg in 2018, SpongeBob has still been going strong. They're set to release not 1 but 2 spin-offs as well as a 3rd theatrical film, all in the near future. SpongeBob's quality has wavered a lot over the years, but at the moment the show's considerably good and they still manage to put out some great episodes now and again. Those weren't the only big shows Nickelodeon made, of course. There were also programs like The Ren and Stimpy Show, Danny Phantom, and Avatar: The Last Airbender. However, they mainly focused on those 3 main shows. I, like many other people, loved all 3 of these shows growing up, and I still enjoy them, or at least for the most part. But let's think about some of the other shows that deserved the spotlight too, but never got it because of Nickelodeon pushing these shows. Cat Scratch, Ah Real Monsters, The Angry Beavers, Invader Zim, My Life as a Teenage Robot, Harvey Beaks, I could go on. But I think you get the point. All of these shows were either bumped to Nicktoons, given long gaps in between episodes or seasons, or just cancelled altogether. That's the biggest problem with Nickelodeon. They treat most of their shows like garbage. Even one of their biggest shows that I mentioned before was terribly mistreated. That was The Fairly OddParents. It wasn't given a proper finale. It ended on a random episode, and that was a little while after it had been bumped to Nicktoons. They weren't even showing it on the main channel when it ended. I should say this now, I like Nicktoons personally. I've watched it for years, especially back when the programming consisted of mostly older Nickelodeon cartoons and some other shows they didn't show on the main channel. However, not everyone watched Nicktoons, and not everyone got Nicktoons as a part of their cable package. Therefore, it's not exactly the best place to put a show, especially one that started on Nickelodeon. Now, do I think Nickelodeon will ever improve with their treatment of cartoons? Honestly, no. Sure, they still air new cartoons, but they play second fiddle to SpongeBob and The Loud House, even the Casa Grandes, the pointless spin-off of The Loud House. Not to mention, they also favor their mostly awful live-action shows like the aforementioned Henry Danger, or I guess Danger Force now, or the All That reboot. I like the older live-action programs, of course, pretty much everything that used to be on the Teen Nick block, but even looking back at those, some of them haven't aged as well as I would have hoped. And by the way, they mistreat their live-action shows too, but since most of them that aired over the past decade suck, I don't really care about that. And speaking of shows that suck, they also put out some stinkers like Breadwinners, Sanjay and Craig, and Fanboy and Chum Chum, but I did my best to avoid most of that stuff. Anyway, that mistreatment of the shows is what really sours Nickelodeon for a lot of people. Plus, they also mistreat the creators as well. Look no further than C.H. Greenblatt, the creator of Harvey Beaks. He hated the way the network was treating his show, so he decided to speak up and vent his frustrations, and honestly, who could blame him? Nickelodeon didn't like that and forced him to apologize, which is utterly ridiculous. At the end of the day, though, despite its major issues, I don't think Nickelodeon is a bad channel. It's certainly my least favorite of the big three, at least at the moment, but I can't deny the impact that it's had on the cartoon world. Disney Channel was a tough one for me to judge because I also had to think about Toon Disney and Disney XD, which is where most of the cartoons are shown. However, Disney Channel has shown cartoons throughout the years, and they still do, even if it may not be the primary focus of the network. They have designated blocks for cartoons on the main channel, and they also air episodes of new series from time to time. However, the main focus of their network, much like with Nickelodeon, is their sitcoms, which, much like Nickelodeon's, varied greatly in quality over the years. Of course, Disney's legacy goes much further back than the Disney Channel. Of course, there are the Mickey Mouse cartoons and the plethora of animated movies they've put out, and that's just scratching the surface. Disney owns just about everything at this point, but I'm not here to go too much into detail about the entire company. Anyway, while they had began showing acquired animated programming since the 80s when the channel began, it wasn't until 2001 when they started showing original animated series with the Proud Family. They've had plenty of live-action programs before that, but, well, just look at the name of this YouTube channel. Honestly, my biggest gripe with Disney Channel as far as a cartoon channel goes is its lack of focus on cartoons. It could be argued that that's what Toon Disney and now Disney XD are for, but still, for the most part the original Disney Channel cartoons air on Disney Channel proper before going to Disney XD. However, unlike with what Nickelodeon does with Nicktoons, it doesn't feel disrespectful the way Disney does it. Disney doesn't completely disregard the show after it's put on the side channel. They still show them on the main channel. Disney XD is just an alternative means of watching the series. Speaking of the Disney Channel programming, let's talk about that a little bit. Of course, I made a video about Jetix on Toon Disney, which you can go watch after this video, and Toon Disney showed a lot of reruns of shows like the original DuckTales, Goof Troop, and programs of that nature. Disney XD did this as well at the beginning, but now they show the original programming that also airs on Disney Channel, as well as some anime, Marvel cartoons, and video game related shows. As for the original Disney Channel animated programming, they've put out great shows like Kim Possible, Dave the Barbarian, American Dragon Jake Long, The Replacements, Phineas and Ferb, Gravity Falls, the list keeps on going. They have had some stinkers like Fish Hooks and The Buzz on Maggie, but for the most part their programming has been pretty solid. However, most of their shows haven't had a huge impact on the industry or community. Of course, shows like Kim Possible, Gravity Falls, and even the DuckTales reboot are exceptions to that. But for the most part, while the quality of the programming was good, it wasn't as celebrated as it maybe should have been, whether it be by the community or by the channel itself. And keep in mind, I'm talking about on a grand scale. I know all of these shows have their fans, and I myself am a fan of several shows I mentioned. Quite honestly, out of these three channels, I think the programming on Disney Channel has the least impact. However, I put it above Nickelodeon because they treat their programming with a lot more respect than Nickelodeon does. Now on to the top channel of the three, and process of elimination should tell you what that is.
You're watching Cartoon Network.
I can already tell that many people may not agree with this placement, and I get it, but hear me out, because I have a lot to say. I know Cartoon Network has plenty of flaws, and believe me, I will address them, but I'm looking at the whole picture here. Of course, Cartoon Network was my most watched channel growing up, and I did say personal bias would play a factor in this, but don't get the wrong idea. I have many more reasons for putting Cartoon Network at the top. When the channel began in 1992, there were no original programs, but that soon changed in 1993 with the Moxie Show. Then there was Space Ghost Coast to Coast in 94, the What a Cartoon Show in 95, and then all bets were off in 1996 when the cartoons started coming out. That line of shows ran from 1996 with Dexter's Laboratory all the way to 2003 with Evil Con Carne. Let's not forget some of the more notable shows in between, such as Johnny Bravo, The Powerpuff Girls, Ed, Edd n Eddy, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Time Squad, Codename Kids Next Door, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and several others. Most of these shows have held up relatively well, except for maybe Cow and Chicken. Regardless, most of these shows were, and still are, well received, and it didn't stop there. There were also plenty of quality shows in the early and mid-2000s, such as Megas XLR, which became a cult classic, and longer-staying series like Samurai Jack, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, The Life and Times of Juniper Lee, Camp Lazlo, Ben 10, Class of 3000, and Chowder. There were some stinkers mixed in there as well, of course, but not everything is going to be a winner. Then we got into the dark ages where Cartoon Network decided to stop making cartoons, and they started making these horrible reality shows like Dude, What Would Happen, Bobby Says, and Destroy Build Destroy. They were also heavily reliant on showing Johnny Test all day every day. That was a really bad time for the channel, and honestly, it killed my love of cartoons for a while. I was worried that Cartoon Network was going to go the same route as Nickelodeon and Disney and just forget about their roots, what made them stand out. Then 2010 came around, and we got the magical Cartoon Network renaissance. In the 2010s, we got shows like Adventure Time, Regular Show, The Amazing World of Gumball, Steven Universe, We Bare Bears, OKKO, Infinity Train, and so on. Sure, we had to sit through shows like The Problem Solvers and Secret Mountain Fort Awesome, and we still have to sit through things like The Powerpuff Girls 2016 and Teen Titans Go, and I'll get to that, but Cartoon Network have just put out so many quality shows. And while some were unfortunately cancelled before their time, and some got long gaps between episodes or seasons, most of them actually got an ending. A lot of their shows even got TV movies. The Powerpuff Girls got a theatrical movie, but that didn't perform so well, but still, it did happen. Another thing that is great about Cartoon Network is its various programming blocks. Sure, this is a lost art now, really, but think back at what they have had over the years. Cartoon Fridays, Toonami, Magoozy, Cartoon Planet, Cartoon Theater, Cartoon Network's Holiday Rush, etc. The other networks had programming blocks too, but they never felt the same. I always felt a sense of unity between all the shows with the Cartoon Network blocks. Speaking of that, remember the old Cartoon City bumpers? Those were amazing. It was so cool to see all these characters from different shows interact with each other. You didn't see anything quite like that on the other channels. Cartoon Network treated its programming and its viewers like a family. Do they still do that today? As far as the viewers go, no. As far as the programming goes, though, they still throw in plenty of Easter eggs and references to other shows past and present inside other current shows. They still have the occasional cool bumper as well, like when they're celebrating the channel's birthday or anniversary or whatever you want to call it. Also, Cartoon Network was innovative and invaded Nickelodeon with a commercial once. Again, nothing that the other channels were doing. Now, of course, I've praised Cartoon Network enough. I need to point out their flaws. First of all, they rely on the same shows a lot. They have a habit of oversaturating their schedule with many continuous hours of the same show. They've kind of improved on that lately, but it's been a problem for years. They did it with Johnny Test, they did it with Teen Titans Go, and they even did it with The Iron Giant back in the day. They used to show that movie for 24 hours on Thanksgiving. It gets repetitive and it makes people tune out. Speaking of which, their terrible live-action shows didn't help. I'm glad they've done away with them, but still, those were all mistakes. Not even just the reality shows, but stuff like Level Up and the awful Incredible Crew were also really bad. Tower Prep was fine, and I kind of like Brain Rush, but that's about it. Another problem I have with the network is a more recent one. All of their shows nowadays look the same. They're all drawn in the same exact style, and while I don't think most of these shows are bad, they don't have a lot of unique qualities to set them apart from the other shows on the network. They all blend together at times, and that's a shame because shows like Craig of the Creek are actually really enjoyable. And for the love of God, Cartoon Network, please stop with the reboots. None of them are good. The Ben 10 reboot is decent-ish, and I don't despise Teen Titans Go anymore, but the Powerpuff Girls 2016 is just inexcusable. That show had no right to exist, and there are no redeeming qualities about it. With all that being said though, I think Cartoon Network has had the biggest impact on the community as a whole. It does have its faults, and it may not be the shining star that it once was, but maybe it'll have another renaissance. That could be said about all three of these channels. Cartoon Network may top the list for me, but I want all three of them to keep going and keep making great cartoons for years to come. Because let's be honest guys, great cartoons are what brings us all together. Animation was my first love, the first thing that I really got interested in. While I can't draw for beans, I love watching animated works, and I have these three channels to thank for that. If it weren't for any of these channels, Cartoon Obsession probably wouldn't exist, and I can't stress that enough. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you have any other cartoons, anime, or other animated works that you want me to talk about in the future, please let me know. After all, it's not my channel, it's our channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and feel free to check out my social media pages, audition for an outro, and join the official Cartoon Obsession Discord. The links for all of which are in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.
Hey fellas, did you miss me? I'm Bill Cipher, and thank you for watching Cartoon Obsession.